Before you hear this story, brace yourself. Because what happened inside a quiet concert hall in downtown Chicago started as a casual moment, an accomplished pianist teasing a blind kid to play just for fun, but what followed left thousands speechless, shattered everything people thought they knew about talent, and transformed one boy's life forever. If you love real-life miracles, emotional twists, and stories that leave you whispering, "No way," then stop scrolling, smash that subscribe button, and turn on notifications, because you're not going to want to miss stories like this one ever again. The rain fell in thin silver threads outside the Grand Chicago Symphony Hall as people hurried inside for the annual Youth Outreach Music Day, an event meant to inspire disadvantaged kids but often mocked by critics as a charity PR stunt. Yet this year it held something no one, not even the world-famous pianist Alexander Voss, could have predicted. He walked into the rehearsal lounge wearing his trademark white scarf, sipping espresso, greeting donors with a half-smile, and glancing with irritation at the group of restless kids his manager insisted he interact with for 10 minutes, but his eyes paused, just for a moment, on a thin boy sitting quietly at the back, head tilted slightly upward, hands folded over a braille book, his dark glasses reflecting the chandelier light. A volunteer whispered, "That's Malik, 12 years old, blind since birth," but Alexander barely nodded, too consumed with thoughts of his grueling tour schedule and tonight's performance. He clapped his hands and said, "All right, who wants to touch a real Steinway?" And laughter erupted as kids swarmed, except Malik, who remained still. Noticing this, Alexander walked over, partly curious, partly annoyed that a child wasn't reacting to his presence, and said, "You don't want to try the piano?" But Malik smiled faintly and replied, "Sir, I can try, I just don't want to break anything. I only play when I can feel the keys first," and something about his calmness irked the pianist, who leaned back and said, "Well, go on then, play something, anything, just for fun, if you can." The kids turned, half expecting a disaster, but Malik stood, shuffled to the bench, placed trembling fingers on the ivory, and took a single breath before pressing down softly on a chord so pure, so perfectly voiced, it silenced the room instantly. Alexander's eyebrow twitched as Malik's hands began gliding across the keys, shaping harmonies with precision most trained musicians struggled to grasp, cascading into improvisations full of warmth and raw emotional intelligence, shifting between jazz, classical, blues, and something entirely his own. The room felt as if gravity itself had paused, every adult frozen, every child wide-eyed, and Alexander slowly lowering his espresso cup without realizing it. The boy, unaware of the stunned audience, poured out music like a confession of every fear, every lonely night, every unspoken hope, ending with a soft unresolved chord that hung in the air like a heartbeat refusing to stop. Alexander exhaled sharply, whispering, "Impossible," and when Malik removed his hands from the keys, he simply said, "Was that okay?" But before anyone could answer, the manager burst in yelling that reporters were waiting, and the moment shattered, yet something irreversible had already begun. Alexander couldn't stop hearing the boy's music even during his performance that evening, a flawless recital ruined internally by a mind spiraling through confusion, envy, and awe. Back in his penthouse later, he replayed Malik's chords in his memory with growing obsession, calling contacts to research the boy, discovering he lived with his aunt in a rough neighborhood after his parents died in a house fire when he was 5, and that he'd never had a formal lesson, just taught himself by touching walls and listening to street musicians. Something about that story cracked open a guilt Alexander hadn't felt in years. 2 days later, he showed up unannounced at Malik's community center, offering lessons, mentorship, even a scholarship, yet a shadow lurking in the background. A jealous event sponsor named Gerald Price saw Alexander's sudden attachment as a threat to his influence and quietly began plotting to use Malik to destroy Alexander's reputation. Gerald contacted Malik's estranged uncle, a bitter man who had once squandered the boy's disability checks before abandoning him, promising money in exchange for claiming legal guardianship, and accusing Alexander of exploitation. Meanwhile, Alexander and Malik's bond deepened beautifully as the boy revealed his synesthetic gift. He didn't just hear notes, he saw them as shapes and colors in his mind, describing Alexander's C minor arpeggios as a staircase of blue glass. Leaving the pianist speechless, Alexander began composing a duet for them to perform at his charity gala, intended to introduce Malik to the world. But days before the event, chaos struck when Child Services stormed the community center with the uncle waving forged papers. Alexander was painted as a manipulator, tabloids exploded with rumors, sponsors withdrew, and Malik, terrified, was taken away. His aunt powerless, Alexander confronted Gerald backstage at a televised interview, where Gerald smirked and revealed he planned everything. "You think I'll let some blind prodigy overshadow my company's sponsorship? No one cares about that kid. Enraged, Alexander lunged but security separated them. In the turmoil, Malik overheard fragments of the scandal on the radio of the group home he'd been forced into, feeling betrayed, confused, and abandoned, believing Alexander had used him. But fate intervened when one night, the group home's old piano tuner heard Malik humming alone and asked him to play. And as Malik performed the duet he'd memorized from Alexander's teachings, the tuner recorded it secretly, sending the audio anonymously to a local reporter known for exposing corruption. The next morning, the story exploded nationwide. Blind boy's piano recording exposes possible sabotage scandal. Now the world wanted answers. Under public pressure, a full investigation launched, revealing Gerald's forgery, the uncle's lies, and Alexander's innocence. But what changed everything was the viral video of Malik's recording. Music so breathtaking that millions demanded to see the child perform live. Alexander, cleared but emotionally exhausted, held a press conference begging forgiveness from Malik for failing to protect him, ending with a plea. "If you'll allow me, I want him to be my student, and my partner." Seeing the broadcast from the group home, Malik whispered, "He didn't leave me, they took me," and his aunt fought legally, and won. To bring him home, invitations from major networks poured in, but Malik asked for only one thing: "I want to finish the duet with Mr. Alexander." So the Chicago Symphony Hall filled once more as cameras from around the world captured a stage lit softly with gold. Alexander sat at the grand piano, hands trembling for the first time in decades, while Malik walked slowly beside him, guided by his aunt, placing his fingers on the keys like returning to an old friend. Alexander whispered, "Ready?" And Malik smiled, "I've been ready since the first day." They began, Alexander with a gentle theme symbolizing struggle, Malik answering with variations filled with hope, the two blending into a storm of harmony that told the story of fear, betrayal, discovery, and forgiveness. Halfway through, Malik took the lead, shifting into a spontaneous improvisation so divine it brought the hall to tears, and even Alexander stopped playing, stunned, choosing instead to listen, to truly listen, to the boy he once underestimated. When the final note faded, the audience rose not just in applause but in a roar, a tidal wave of emotion unlike anything the hall had ever held. Malik reached for Alexander's arm and whispered, "Did I do good?" And Alexander, voice cracking, said, "You didn't just do good, you changed the world." The next morning, scholarships rolled in, universities offered honorary mentorships, donors funded national programs for visually impaired musicians. Gerald was arrested, and the uncle fled the state. Through it all, Malik stayed grounded, insisting his gift wasn't magic. "I just hear stories inside the notes," he'd say, but for millions who watched the performance replay over and over, it felt like witnessing destiny itself. By year's end, Malik and Alexander toured together across the US and UK, filling stadiums with people who wanted to hear the boy who played, just for fun, and revealed a miracle instead. And as their final concert closed in London, Alexander announced something that stunned the world. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I retire from solo performance, because the future of music is standing right beside me." The spotlight turned to Malik, who raised his face toward the cheering crowd, tears slipping beneath his dark glasses, hands resting gently on the keys as if thanking them. And when he began to play the opening notes of a brand new piece, a song written for every child who had ever been overlooked, the world knew they were witnessing the beginning of a legend.